Every time I talk to somebody about going to Disney World, they tell me how expensive it is every time they've gone. And that's why I decided to take on the challenge of planning a trip for my family under $1,000. So to start this challenge off, I'd like to clarify, this trip was for 2 adults and 1 child. So I think the most important thing to do is decide what park you're going to, and then after that, you can decide where you're gonna stay. If you're gonna be going to Epcot or Hollywood Studios, I definitely recommend staying at a resort that's on the Skyliner Trail. If not, it really doesn't matter where you stay. But in this situation, we're going to Epcot for our 1 day in the park. So we're gonna end up staying at Pop Century, which is the most valued resort, and it's right next to Art of Animation. So if we wanna take a break in the middle of the day and visit the resort next door, we definitely can, and see their attractions that they have built in, like Cars, Nemo, Little Mermaid, or Lion King. So like I said, we booked at Pop Century, and that was 2 nights coming at $220 a night. So now we're at $440. So next, you know what we had to do was buy park tickets to Epcot. It was $149 per adult and then $144 per child. And that came out to $442. So now we're at $882. That leaves us with more than $100 to spend in those 2 days on food, merchandise, apparel, whatever you really want to get while you're in Disney World. Now we booked this trip 2 weeks out from us leaving. If I was to do this again and I was to fly instead of drive, I would book it further out than just 2 weeks ahead of time. But we knew that we were gonna be driving this time, and yes, this was my first time driving, and we went from New Orleans to Orlando overnight. So fast forward 2 weeks, it's finally time for us to go to Orlando from New Orleans. And this was the first time I've ever actually driven to Disney World. All the previous trips we've been on, we've flown, and it kind of scared me a little bit. It was an 8.5 hour drive, but honestly, we've driven now every single time since then because it was such a fun drive. We made it in line to the Skyliner at 6:30 in the morning to make sure that we got there for early entry and rode Ratatouille, especially since we're going into Epcot. Ratatouille or Frozen are the 2 rides that you need to decide which one you're gonna go on at early entry, or else you're not gonna get onto it unless you have Genie Plus. So we hurried up, got on the Skyliner, got into Epcot, went straight to Ratatouille, was able to ride it, and honestly, if you've never ridden Ratatouille, I definitely recommend riding it. It's a very immersive experience, especially for the kids. It feels like you're one of the rats inside the movie, going through the kitchen, and I just really recommend it, especially if you have children. It's just a really fun experience for them. And when we got off Ratatouille, we saw that we had a little bit of extra time before the park opened to everyone else, and that's whenever we made our way over to the Epcot ball and told Connor, Allie's son, that our family was growing, and we showed Connor the ultrasound pictures of Wolfie, who we just took his first Disney trip just a couple weeks ago, and it was just a really great experience for Connor. He loved the fact that we took him to one of his favorite parks to tell him he was going to be a big brother. One thing I forgot to mention, this was before they updated the breakfast hours at the resorts, so the cafes didn't open up until about 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. I can't remember the exact time, but it was actually too late for us to be able to make early entry. So we brought bars from our house that we already had, so that didn't really have to add to the $1,000 budget that we had. But in case anyone was wondering if we ate breakfast, we did. They were just bars. After getting pictures, we made our way over to Frozen before the line got ridiculously long. Obviously, it still was a little bit long, but at the end of the day, it's one of those big rides that everyone wants to ride. So we hopped in line for that early in the morning, and we waited probably about half an hour. Connor wanted to ride it. He'd never ridden it before, and I mean, what are you gonna do? Tell a kid, no, you can't ride the ride, especially when it's just a really chill, fun trip for us to just knock out a couple rides. We'd already been a couple months before, and then we were going again in August, and this was in June. After we finished riding Frozen, we made our way over to the Mexico Pavilion for lunch, grabbed something that we could all share. It was some nachos and tacos, and that came out to $21 for us. So now we're sitting at $903 for the trip. After we wrapped up lunch, we made our way over to the land. They have the ride Living with the Land, and if you haven't ridden the ride, I definitely recommend it. It's a really great experience. It always has a very short wait time, and you get to see all of the plants that Disney uses to bring food into the parks in a more natural and organic way, as well as you get to see the fish and shrimp and a bunch of different types of food that they use inside the parks and that they grow naturally inside of Disney World. After that, we made our way over to Soarin', which is still within the land. So what Soarin' is you're on this ginormous glider with a bunch of other people, but you get lifted up and it's as if you're soaring around the world's big landmarks. It's a really cool experience. I recommend you go if you haven't. But after that ride, we made our way over to Figment, just because if you're in Epcot, you definitely have to ride Figment. Once we finished that one ride up, we made our way over to the little pavilion outside of Figment, and we let Connor play in the little water jumping feature area while we just sat, relaxed, took some pictures with some PhotoPass cast members, saw Winnie the Pooh, and then we made our way back to the Skyliner so we could take a midday nap. Now, whenever I talk to people, they say that they want to get the most out of their entire Disney trip. So they go from rope drop to park close, and I actually recommend to never do this, even if you don't have kids with you when you're going. It's just very exhausting to be in Disney World, and there's a lot of overstimulation there. You need to take those breaks and take care of yourself. It's just good to, even if you're taking like a little hour break, stop by another resort you've never been to. Just hang out there just to get yourself out of the environment of the park where everything's constantly moving. It can get very aggravating at times when there's a lot of people around. So just take the break for an hour, maybe 2 hours, and then go back into the park after once you've recharged. After we finished up our nap break, we grabbed dinner at the Pop Century cafeteria. I don't recommend eating all your meals at the cafeteria. We ate there because that's what fit within our schedule and our plans for the day. And there obviously are a lot of good gluten-free options there. I have to eat gluten-free, so it fits perfectly with my diet to be able to eat at Disney World, and they have a lot of good options in the cafeteria, so I wasn't complaining. It's just not a super nice quick service like we would have gotten in Epcot, but it just didn't fit in our schedule to eat dinner in Epcot with what we were trying to do for the remainder of the day. At the end of the evening, we made our way back to the Skyliner, and we were able to go to Epcot, close out the park. We were there for about an hour, and then it just started pouring down raining, and that was just the wrap of the day, especially because Epcot was closing. We were able to ride Soarin' one more time in the land. It's one of Connor's favorite rides again, so we made sure we rode that a second time. And then we took pictures one more time in front of the Epcot ball at night. It's just beautiful at night. They added a bunch of illumination, different like light balls on the actual big Epcot ball itself, so it just looks very beautiful at night. If you could take pictures with your family in front of the Epcot ball at night, I definitely recommend it. It's one of those pictures that you can put on a frame, and it just looks like a very beautiful, fun experience, and it just looks like very vibrant, and it's the whole family smiling, and it just captures that moment. So I always recommend, if you're in Epcot at night, take pictures with the PhotoPass cast members. They're gonna really take care of you and make sure that your pictures show what your experience was like in the parks. And what we decided to plan for day 2 was this would be a resort hopping day. And the reason why you do this is it breaks up the trip, gives you a little bit of relaxation time, and you get to go check out the other resorts that you're not staying at, especially because there's a lot of cool things at those resorts. And I think that staying at Pop Century is the perfect resort to stay at whenever you plan on doing a resort hopping day, because it's at the beginning of the Skyliner trail, like I said before. So what we did for day 2 is we started at Pop Century, we had our bars for breakfast, and then hopped on the Skyliner and went to Caribbean Beach. The nice thing about Caribbean Beach is they have a huge pirate themed pool, and it's just perfect for the kids. They have a beautiful bucket on top of a pirate ship, so it's just a really cool little spot. We ended up grabbing lunch while we were chilling by the pool at Caribbean Beach, and it ended up totaling out to $29. Again, I preach quick service. You order quick service for 2 adults and a child, and it normally doesn't go above $30. Next, after spending a majority of the early afternoon in Caribbean Beach, we moved our way over to Riviera, which is the next resort, which is a DVC resort in the Skyliner Trail. We hung out by their pool. They have a cool little play area for the little kids, and then they have a very cool lounge area for the adults, which I think is a really great experience because it allows the kids to have something to do, and they have cast members entertaining the kids. Just a great experience for both the adults and the children, which again is the #1 reason why you go to Disney World. There's catering for all ages, and it's not just fun for the kids or just fun for the adults. There's fun for both of them. One last thing about Riviera, it has such a great quick service restaurant. It almost feels like table service, the type of food you're served. So it's always one of my favorite spots to pick up dinner. It ended up totaling out to $33. It was our most expensive dinner, but it's my favorite, especially whenever you're eating gluten-free inside Disney. Having a menu that is unique, especially in the resort areas, is just unheard of. So I always have to stop and eat dinner there if we have the opportunity to. Riviera is actually the end of the Skyliner hopping if you're planning on going to the pools. You can't get into Beach and Yacht Club, which is the next resort on the Skyliner and the final resort, unless you're staying at that resort. So don't even try to go over there because they won't let you in. They have little tags that you put around your wrist saying that you have a reservation there. I just wouldn't even waste my time going down over there. They're not gonna let you have even a day pass to get into their pool. It's a beautiful pool, but it's not a resort that allows other guests from other resorts into their pools. After dinner, we made our way back in the opposite direction on the Skyliner, back to Caribbean Beach. Did a little playground. We let Connor get the last little bit of energy out at the playground. Once we finished up at the playground, we made our way back to Pop Century and just finished up the rest of our trip inside our room, hanging out, watching the fireworks on the TV, which means it's a great experience, fireworks with the cool AC. But that's a wrap for our trip. We ended up totaling out $3 under budget, so we had $997 spent on a $1,000 budget trip. So I'd call that a success, and that's how you Disney on a budget.